Human beings no longer seek to live better. They just seek to feel better.
Hmm.
I really want you to just sit with that observation for a second.
It's heavy.
It is. Think about your day so far, right? From the exact moment you woke up to right now. How many times have you instinctively reached for your phone without actually knowing why?
Yeah, just that automatic muscle memory.
Exactly. Like maybe you were waiting for an elevator or maybe there was just a brief, like a 3-second lull in a conversation.
Right.
You weren't looking for a specific piece of information. You weren't, expecting an urgent text message. You were just looking for a spark.
A feeling.
You were looking for a feeling. And that tiny, almost invisible shift in our daily behavior is the absolute core of what we're plunging into today.
And it is a profound behavioral shift.
Yeah.
I mean, it completely alters how we interact with the very fabric of reality itself.
It really does.
When you start examining those micro habits, you realize the implications are just staggering.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a truly radical, frankly, pretty unsettling and deeply fascinating book called Homo Dopaminus.
Anatomy of Instant Pleasure and the Extinction of Merit.
That's the one. By Xander Grimm. To put it simply, this text is a roadmap of our own hijacked biology. But before we get into the really heavy-hitting ideas, we should probably establish some context about the author.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Because the framing here really changes how we absorb the material.
Right, so Xander Grimm is actually a pseudonym.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The author is an independent researcher, a self-taught thinker who operates on the extreme frontiers of philosophy, neuroscience, and sociology.
Kind of off the grid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They actively avoid the spotlight. They prefer to let the weight of the work speak for itself. And Grimm makes a very specific disclaimer right at the beginning of the text, which is really important to echo here.
Which is?
This book is not a clinical manual.
Okay.
It is not a medical diagnosis, and you definitely won't find it in a psychiatric textbook.
So if you're listening to this and looking for clinical medical advice, this isn't that.
Far from it. Grimm refers to the work as a philosophical autopsy of our modern, hyperstimulated biology.
A philosophical autopsy. I love that phrasing.
It's brilliant. It's an exploration of collective cultural and psychological phenomena. The whole intention is to provoke deep reflection about the systems we live in,
Right.
not to offer, comfortable, easy solutions to clinical issues.
Which sets up our mission for this deep dive perfectly. We are going to explore how your very nervous system has been co-opted by the attention economy. We are going to look at how the traditional concept of merit has been quietly replaced by virality. And most importantly, we'll outline what you can actually do to reclaim the sovereignty of your own mind.
A big agenda.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the absolute biological center of the entire book, dopamine, the molecule of now.
Yeah, and to understand the book, we first have to correct a massive cultural misconception about that specific molecule.
Because everyone gets it wrong.
Almost everyone. When most people hear the word dopamine, they automatically think of pleasure.
Right, like eating chocolate.
Exactly.
Right.
They think it's the biological reward you get when you eat a piece of cake or win a video game. But biologically speaking, dopamine isn't actually about the reward of pleasure at all.
Wait, really?
No. It is about the anticipation of pleasure.
The anticipation.
It is the chemical promise that pleasure is coming.
Oh, wow. So it's the engine of desire rather than the destination.
That is the absolute perfect way to phrase it. It's the drive that gets you to seek things out. I mean, evolutionarily, it was vital for keeping us alive.
Because it made us look for food.
Right. It gave our ancestors the urgency to hunt, to explore over the next hill, to find a mate. But today, the survival environment has vanished.
Yeah, we aren't foraging in the woods anymore.
Exactly. The fire's no longer in the forest, it's in the cortex.
Right.
That exact same predictive biological system has been hijacked by our environment.
So we aren't hunting for survival anymore. We're hunting for stimuli. That distinction completely changes how you view almost everything. Because if dopamine is primarily about anticipation, it means we've become a society addicted to the expectation of happiness.
Yes.
Rather than happiness itself. We're constantly chasing the wrapper, not the chocolate.
That's exactly it.
Let's look at how the text frames this economic shift. Think about the old industrial economy, right? The factory system exploited physical muscle. It needed your literal physical body to forge steel or extract coal.
Heavy physical labor.
Right. But what Grimm terms neurocapitalism doesn't care about your physical labor. It exploits your impulses.
And the deliberate nature of that exploitation is what makes it so incredibly effective. The digital platforms you interact with every day,
TikTok, Instagram, Netflix.
Right, all of them. They don't view themselves as content providers in the traditional sense. They operate as attention merchants.
Attention merchant.
Yeah. They are refining human dopamine the way an oil company refines petroleum. They aren't selling you a video or a post. They're selling your neural activation to third-party advertisers. And what's fascinating here is that the algorithms running these platforms have uncovered something incredibly dark about human neurology in the process.
Wait, let me make sure I'm translating the science correctly here because the text gets pretty dense. When it talks about these algorithms targeting the mesolimbic circuit,
Right.
for those of us who aren't neuroscientists, we're basically talking about the brain's main reward highway.
Right.
That is correct. It is the pathway that processes value, reward, and motivation. And what the algorithms discovered is that negative emotions,
Like fear and anger.
fear, anger, and absolute indignation, those activate that reward highway just as effectively, and not more effectively, than desire or joy.
That is wild.
The code doesn't care if a piece of content makes you feel inspired or if it fills you with blinding rage. Conflict sells because it chemically arouses the nervous system.
So for the algorithm, your hatred and your desire are essentially equivalent.
Completely identical in terms of engagement. That is a terrifying mirror to hold up to our daily habits. I want to bring this right back to you, the listener. Every single time you casually accept a digital cookie, every time you mindlessly swipe up to see the next short video, you are literally trading your dopamine for distraction. You might think you are just a consumer enjoying a free, entertaining app. But you aren't the consumer.
No.
Your mesolimbic circuit, your brain's capacity to want and engage, is the actual product being sold on the open market.
And the natural extension of that constant unnatural extraction of our attention is an entirely new set of modern pathologies. We are fundamentally altering how we experience reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I noticed this in my own life while reading the text. I caught myself pulling out my phone while I was waiting 30 seconds for my coffee to warm up in the microwave.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Or I'm aggressively tapping my steering wheel at a red light. This biological hijacking doesn't just make us distracted, it fundamentally changes our daily experience of time. We are literally losing the ability to wait.
Grimm diagnoses this cultural shift as waiting deficit syndrome.
Waiting deficit syndrome.
Yeah. Historically, patience was considered a cardinal virtue, right? It was something to be cultivated. Now, it has been completely pathologized.
We treat it like an illness.
Exactly. Society simply can no longer tolerate the gap between expectation and reward. If a web page takes 4 seconds to load, we feel a very real physical anxiety in our chests.
Oh, absolutely.
If we have to stand in a line at the grocery store, we panic and pull out our screens to medicate the empty time.
Grimm brings up the classic Stanford marshmallow test in the text, but frames it differently than we usually hear.
Yeah, this part was brilliant.
We all know the premise, right? Can the child wait 15 minutes to get 2 marshmallows instead of eating one right away? The capacity for delay was traditionally seen as this massive marker for future success.
Right.
But Grimm argues that we shouldn't just look at the test. We need to look at the environment. We are essentially being trained by the modern economy to fail the marshmallow test every single minute of the day.
Because the modern world functions on what psychologists call a variable reward system.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. You never know what the next swipe on a feed will bring. Will it be funny? Outrageous?
Yeah.
Boring. It's the exact same psychological mechanism that keeps people pulling the lever in a casino.
And this constant barrage of micro-stimuli just completely destroys our neurological tolerance for empty space.
It wipes it out.
Which brings us to a concept I absolutely loved in the sources, the murder of boredom.
A murder of boredom, yeah.
Well, centuries. Boredom was basically the womb of human creativity. It was this fertile, unstructured pause where ideas were born, where you daydreamed, where you actually processed the events of your life. Now, boredom is treated like a virus. It's an infection we feel we have to immediately eradicate with a dose of infinite scrolling.
And there is a very robust scientific defense for the necessity of silence and boredom. When your body is still and you feel that initial twinge of being bored.
That itch to grab the phone.
Right. If you push past that itch, your brain activates something called the default mode network, or DMN.
The DMN.
Yes. This network is absolutely critical for human cognition. It is the state where the brain connects disparate ideas, where it imagines future scenarios, where it reflects on past conversations and formulates plans.
So it's doing the heavy lifting in the background.
Exactly. By eliminating boredom with a wall of constant digital noise, we're suppressing the DMN and causing severe attentional fatigue.
Because the brain never actually gets to power down and organize its files. It's just constantly playing defense against new information.
And the long-term consequence of that chronic fatigue is anhedonia.
Which is what, exactly?
It's the clinical inability to enjoy things. When you flood the brain with constant, cheap, effortless dopamine hits, the brain adapts by raising its threshold for pleasure.
So you need more just to feel normal.
Right. Suddenly, a beautiful sunset, a deep conversation with a friend, or reading a complex book just feels insufficient. You become numb to real life because your baseline for stimulation has been artificially pushed sky high.
That explains so much. You end up feeling exhausted at the end of the day, but you don't know why, because you haven't technically done anything physically demanding.
Right.
You've just been subjected to a fire hose of stimuli. And this internal biological shift has created a massive external societal shift. Because our brains have changed, the way we assign value to human beings has changed. Let's dig into the concept of doped merit.
This is perhaps one of the most provocative and debated arguments in Homo Dopaminus. It fundamentally challenges how we define success.
The text contrasts two completely different paths of human endeavor to illustrate this. On one hand, you have a life-saving surgeon,
Right.
someone who spends a decade in grueling, unglamorous study, sacrificing sleep, personal relationships, and youth to eventually acquire the skills to save human lives.
Decades of delayed gratification.
Exactly. On the other hand, you have teenage footballers like Lamine Yamal or Kylian Mbappe who achieve instant, stratospheric global fame and unimaginable wealth before they're barely adults.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Grimm uses these examples to highlight what he calls an inverse meritocracy.
An inverse meritocracy.
Yes, we no longer live in an economy that values profound, localized human impact. We live in an economy of shine.
Wait, hold on. I got to play devil's advocate here because I'm sure some listeners are thinking the exact same thing.
Go for it.
Someone like Kylian Mbappe doesn't just stumble onto a pitch and magically become a world-class athlete.
Wait, no.
He trains for tens of thousands of hours. He sacrificed his entire childhood to perfect his craft. How is that an inverse meritocracy? Isn't that the definition of merit?
It's a vital distinction, and Grimm is very clear that we should not blame the athletes or dismiss their effort. They aren't the villains here. They are simply the most visible biological symbols of how this system operates. The critical point is that the global market isn't paying for Mbappe's thousands of unseen hours of sacrifice in the rain.
Right.
The market is paying for the massive synchronized dopamine spike he triggers in millions of brains at the exact second he scores a spectacular goal.
Oh, I see.
The reward is entirely disconnected from the sacrifice. The reward is tied purely to the scale of the neural activation he provides to the audience.
Okay, that makes sense. It's essentially an emotional data center. True merit, the kind that builds civilizations, cures diseases, and writes masterpieces, requires delay.
Yes.
It requires enduring long periods without any applause or dopamine reward.
And the global market doesn't want delay. It pays exclusively for immediate neural activation. We have built a factory of instant idols.
It's depressing when you put it like that.
It gets worse. What is particularly alarming is how even human charisma has been reduced to algorithms. We historically looked up to deep moral or intellectual models, people of substance whose value took time to understand. Now, the system measures and rewards visual charisma. Marketing agencies know that a direct gaze to the camera increases viewer retention by 28%.
You're kidding.
No, it's tracked. Or that a specific cadence of voice triggers a micro-discharge of pleasure in the listener.
So you no longer succeed by being inherently valuable to society. You are deemed valuable by society simply because you succeed at capturing attention. And this erosion of merit bleeds into every aspect of culture. We don't just consume entertainment this way, we consume ideas this way. Which brings us to a concept that, frankly, held an uncomfortable mirror up to my own habits.
Let me guess.
Cognitive pornography.
It is a brilliant term for a very modern phenomenon. Grimm argues that even our intellectualism has been corrupted by dopaminergic loops.
I think a lot of us fall into this trap thinking we are building good habits. You're scrolling and you see a 30-second pop psychology video or an aesthetic Instagram post featuring a moody background track and a quote from Marcus Aurelius.
Right? Highly stylized.
Yeah.
You read it, you like it, and you get a dopamine hit because you feel like you just learned something profound. You feel intellectual.
But the reality is, you haven't actually learned anything. Cognitive pornography gives you the illusion of understanding without requiring any of the painful, slow effort of deep thought.
You just get the shortcut.
You get the climax of the idea without the intellectual journey of reading the book, wrestling with the context, or challenging the premise.
Yeah.
And much like visual pornography, it replaces a genuine, complex, and sometimes difficult connection with a cheap, easily consumed, simulated stimulus.
It's the spectacle of thought rather than the act of thinking. You're signaling intelligence to yourself and the algorithm without doing the work.
And because we are collectively losing the patience required to think deeply, we are consequently losing the ability to talk to each other.
Yeah, the text gets into that too.
This leads directly to what Grimm outlines as the death of conversation. A real conversation is inherently frictional.
It requires pauses. It requires active listening, navigating nuance, and most importantly, the willingness to exist in a space of disagreement without immediately shutting down.
But in a dopaminergic ecosystem, conversation is replaced by what he calls echoes.
Echoes, yes. We no longer talk to understand the other person. We talk to react, to score rhetorical points, and to be validated by our own ideological bubble.
And when we lose the capacity to converse, we lose the ability to build a shared moral compass. Grimm calls this outcome moral dataism.
Moral dataism.
Because we are so overwhelmed, exhausted, and disconnected from one another, we've started relying on algorithms to calculate right and wrong for us.
Yeah.
We look to the metrics, how many likes an opinion gets, what the trending consensus is on our specific feed to determine our ethics.
We outsource our morality to the hive mind.
We really do.
And that strips humanity of its necessary beautiful uncertainty.
Yeah.
Morality requires doubt. Algorithms only execute.
When we surrender our ethics to the feed, we suffer what Grimm diagnoses as soul fatigue, or dopaminergic depression. I really want to linger on that term, soul fatigue, because it's not traditional sadness, is it?
No, it is a distinctly modern condition. Traditional sadness is typically an acute emotional response to a loss, a trauma, or a specific event.
Right.
Soul fatigue is the numbness of a brain that is so oversaturated with empty pleasure that it literally can no longer feel. It is a state of chronic, heavy apathy.
You've consumed so many micro-joys and micro-outrages that your emotional baseline is completely flattened. You are awake, you are scrolling, you are consuming the content, but inside there is just a vast echoing void.
The tragedy of soul fatigue is that you are desperately seeking connection in the exact place that is causing the isolation.
So what does this all mean for us? Are we just doomed to be these mindless avatars in a giant emotional hive? Are we just batteries for the attention economy?
It sounds bleak.
It does. But we aren't just going to leave you staring into a dopaminergic void.
Good. Because if we leave the system unchecked, the trajectory is bad. But Grimm's text outlines a very clear resistance, what he calls a pedagogy of reintegration.
Okay.
The goal is to evolve consciously into Homo reconfiguratus.
Homo reconfiguratus, the conscious redesign of the emotional brain. It sounds a bit like science fiction, but it's actually highly actionable biology, right?
Completely. Because of neuroplasticity, the brain can literally rewire itself. If we trained it to be impatient, we can actively train it to wait again.
So let's give you, the listener, the actual steps to reclaiming your mind. First up is dopaminergic hygiene. This means consciously choosing to embrace friction in your life.
The entire digital world is designed to be completely frictionless. Infinite scroll, auto-playing next episodes, one-click purchasing. You have to intentionally reintroduce friction to break the loop.
So making things harder on purpose.
Exactly. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Put physical distance between you and your devices when you're working or resting.
Leave the phone in another room.
Exactly. But more than just restricting technology, Grimm emphasizes actively practicing slowness.
Okay, but realistically, how do we actually do that? Speaking for myself, if I try to go for a walk to walk the dog without a podcast or music playing, the silence feels genuinely oppressive. It feels like my brain is literally itching.
And that itch is literally the sensation of withdrawal. Your brain is demanding the stimulation it's accustomed to.
Wow.
Practicing slowness means experiencing the physical discomfort of that silence and just sitting with it. It means eating your food without staring at a screen.
You sit, drink at the wall.
Or out a window. It means going for that walk and letting the silence be loud until that discomfort eventually fades and transforms back into peace. It's exactly like rehabbing an atrophied muscle you haven't used in years. It's going to ache at first.
You have to push through the boredom until you reach the DMN state on the other side.
Yeah.
And on a broader societal level, Grimm calls for transcendental education. Our current school systems and corporate training programs are heavily adopting the exact same gamified badge reward loops as social media.
Which is dangerous.
Yeah, we are teaching children and employees to work purely for the immediate dopamine hit of a good grade, a digital sticker, or a Slack emoji.
Instead, we need to teach the human brain to hold on to mystery again. We need to value long-term effort without an immediate, quantifiable payoff. We have to teach ourselves how to read a dense, difficult book without checking our phones every page. How to build something that takes years to complete, not minutes.
We have to make merit mean something again, independent of who applauds for it on the internet. Reintegration means reconnecting the body, the emotion, and the intellect. It means stepping out of this frantic, continuous present and remembering that we exist in a flow of time that requires patience.
If you do not control where your attention goes, you do not control your life. It really is that simple and that profound.
This has been an incredibly intense journey, and honestly, we are just skimming the surface here. This deep dive is truly just the tip of the iceberg of what's inside Xander Grimm's sources.
Oh, there's so much more.
The overarching takeaway is that true freedom in the modern world isn't about having a million choices of what to watch or buy. True freedom means recovering the sovereignty of your own attention.
Absolutely.
For those of you listening who want to explore these uncomfortable but absolutely necessary truths further, you can find the complete text of Homo Dopaminus over on Amazon or directly at xandergrimm.com. It is an essential read if you've been feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, or just numb from modern hyperconnectivity.
This raises an important question, one that Grimm leaves lingering in the air at the end of his exploration. If the entire global economic system relies on our constant, frantic consumption of digital pleasure to survive, what if the most radical, revolutionary act you can commit today isn't marching in the streets or arguing in a comment section, but simply sitting alone in a quiet room, doing absolutely nothing?